Recovered last night. I hope you're trying to be a politician. I hope your team won. Okay, I don't want to offend anybody. Speaking of politician, I see our good friend who served this great state and our nation with honor and distinction, and so well respected on both sides of the aisle in the United States Congress. And quite frankly, we lost an awful lot in Congress when David Cicilline left Congress. So, I've had the privilege of meeting many members of Congress on both sides of the aisle, and over the years, and members on both sides would say that he truly was a man of honor and integrity and compassion and passionate on issues that are so important to us. In particular, one bill that I remember fondly is gun legislation. Very passionate on an advocate and how we can find ways of getting people to work together. So David is now, as you know, is the head of the Rhode Island Foundation and also a new member of the New England Council. We thank him for that, but we also congratulate him on his appointment and look forward to working with him in the future. I also want to thank our friends here at Amgen for sponsoring today's program, as they have done on so many occasions here in Providence. In particular, I want to recognize a longtime member of the board of directors, although he's en route here. It's the traffic that has delayed him, and David Goggins, who has served for many years on the board. He's done a fantastic job, and we're blessed to have him. But we also are fortunate to have Chris Kent, who will introduce our very special friend in just a moment. So again, Amgen, thank you for what you do. 2024 has gotten off to a very busy start at the New England Council. There's some other great events planned in the next couple of weeks. Here in New England, we're looking forward to Capitol Hill breakfast programs in the next month with Representative Chris Pappas of the 1st Congressional District in New Hampshire, and here Senator Jack Reed. In Washington, we will host Senator Angus King at a Capitol breakfast 1 month from today. And speaking of Washington, today's registration opens for our 2024 Washington Leaders Conference, which will take place on May 15th and 16th in our nation's capital. We have a great 2 days planned and several speakers already confirmed, including none other than our guest speaker here today, Congressman Gabe. There are also sponsorship opportunities available, so please see me or Larry if you're interested in learning more. But today we're honored to welcome the newest member of the New England Congressional Delegation, Representative Gabe for his first visit to the New England Council. And to introduce the Congressman, I'm very pleased to hand it over to Chris Kent, the Associate Director of State Government Affairs at Amgen.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you for the kind introduction. I'm so happy to be here today. Also just wanted to welcome everyone to today's breakfast for Congressman Gabe Amo's first address to the New England Council members. So really exciting today. As Jim had just said, my name is Chris Kent. I've been with Amgen for about 7 years now, a little over 7 years. I work as part of our state government affairs team. I cover New England. Amgen has been part of the Rhode Island community for a little over 21 years now, and we love being here. We love the quality of life here. We love the leadership, the access to leadership of policymakers and decision makers. It's really an amazing special state that we do have here. A little bit about our site here in Rhode Island. We have a little over 900 staff with 7 buildings. We also have one of the newest, most advanced biotech manufacturing facilities in the world here. It was a recently completed $250 million expansion. Overall, we have about a little over $2 billion invested here in Rhode Island. So it's a significant site. It's a significant place within our Amgen network. I also wanted to say that as one of the world's leading biotech companies, we have a mission to serve patients, and I wanted to quickly share with you all that our site in Rhode Island manufactures 14 products, and over the course of 2023, we served approximately 11 million patients around the world. So it's something that we're really passionate about, and we're so happy to be here today. Also, just quickly wanted to talk about the New England Council. We really value our partnership with the New England Council. Amgen has been a member for over 10 years now. And I just wanted to thank the great work that Jim and Larry and the rest of the team offer, bringing us all together here to network, to meet policymakers like Congressman Amo and Congressman Cicilline previously. So we're just really happy to be here today, and just want to thank the great work that the council has done throughout the region every single year. They're putting on 65, 75 events, just bringing everybody together around the region. So it's really special work that they're doing, and really proud to be here. Now, to talk a little bit about why we're all here today for Congressman Amo, I'm here to introduce, so luckily, the Congressman, Rhode Island's 1st Congressional District Member of Congress. I met Gabe nearly 18 years ago. I can't believe how time flies. But we met first at the Rhode Island Democratic Party's combined campaign headquarters. Gabe had graduated from high school recently, and he was working on the 2006 White House for Senate campaign. And if you remember, it was a long time ago, Sheldon was running against Lincoln Chafee, who was the incumbent at the time. At that time, I was running Patrick Kennedy's reelection. I ran his 2006 and 2008 reelection campaigns, and it was a really big kind of campaign. Congressman Landry was there, Congressman Kennedy was there, the White House for Senate team was there, I remember Patrick Lynch was there. Everybody was there, and it was a great time to meet people, and there was just so much energy about it. While Sheldon had a huge campaign, I think there were over 50 staffers. I want to say 100, but I could be wrong. But there were a lot of people there. And Gabe really differentiated himself from everybody. And I remember meeting him, it was like 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the morning. Everyone was there just kind of working, kind of wrapping up from the day, and just kind of talking with folks. And Gabe was just different. He had a real passion for organizing. He had a real passion for the political process. He had a real passion for everything, with the controlled chaos of a campaign. And I'm sure, everybody's kind of aware, it's just kind of craziness when it's the campaign time. But he really embraced it. He had a real passion for it. And I kind of knew that he was going to be doing some great things, and he most certainly is. As a little bit of background for the congressman, originally from Pawtucket, he is the son of 2 parents from West Africa. His mother is originally from Liberia, and his father is from Ghana. As a son of a mother who is a nurse and a father who owns a liquor store, Gabe understands what it's like to grow up in a working-class family. His story is one that is familiar to so many in Rhode Island, one of hard work, resilience, grit, and determination. Not only is Gabe talented and smart and hardworking, I can also proudly say that he's a great person who has literally made history here in Rhode Island. And I just want to clap for that. And I can definitely say that the voters of the 1st Congressional District has made the right decision to elect him to Congress. He's the right guy for the job, and I can tell you that he has already hit the ground running. Gabe has a resume second to none. He graduated from Wheaton College with a degree in political science and economics, and then he went to go study at the Oxford University. Congressman Amo has spent most of his career in public service in Rhode Island and Washington, D.C. Congressman Amo has worked for 2 U.S. presidents, just within itself. That's amazing. Amazing. He worked in the Obama and Biden administrations, most recently serving within the Biden administration as a special assistant to the president and as deputy director of the White House Office of Intergovernmental Affairs. And basically what this means is he was the liaison or the conduit to mayors and local elected officials to ensure that these leaders across the country were able to access federal resources made available to them through the historic legislation like the American Rescue Plan and the Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act of 2021 that President Biden had signed into law. And those are just two short examples of many things. And I do feel like I'm shortchanging you, Gabe. You've done so many things, but I gotta keep it limited. Furthermore, Gabe coordinated responses for the president to major national crises, including gun violence, extreme weather, and public health emergencies. A little closer to home, and previously, Congressman Amo was the Director of Public Engagement and Community Affairs for Governor Raimondo, now U.S. Commerce Secretary, and he was one of the governor's senior advisors and kind of a point for the administration. Gabe's professional experiences have prepared him for this job, and I know he's ready to deliver for the 1st District. I thought it was important to mention that Gabe is also a member of the House Committee on Foreign Affairs and the House Committee on Science, Space, and Technology. Additionally, he is a member of the House Artificial Intelligence and Hunger Caucuses and is part of the House Gun Violence Prevention Task Force. And these are all really important issues that we're dealing with today in Rhode Island, but across the country as well. Congressman Amo is committed to fighting for federal policies and resources that elevate economic opportunities for working families and support job creation in supply chains of the future. For the first time, and I know it won't be his last, I just want to welcome you here once again. And at this time, I'd like to invite Jim and Congressman Amo back up to the stage for a fireside chat.
It's the flag. And
your good side.
Yeah. No. They want you next to the flag. So, okay. I have a few questions, and then as I'm asking my few questions, maybe I'll give you a couple of minutes to think of a question to ask the newly elected member. 432? One. In seniority. 431.
But that's only for a week, because tomorrow in New York, we're going to replace my former colleague, George Santos, with someone who is impressive and has already served, Tom Suozzi, former Congressman Tom Suozzi. So if you have friends, I know this isn't this type of event, you should encourage civic participation in New York's 3rd Congressional District, because everybody should vote.
This is a nonpartisan.
Nonpartisan.
Civic engagement. Civic engagement. David Goggin has joined us. Got stuck in a little traffic. We thank David for, again, hosting with Chris. And you have now been in office, I think, 3 months, almost to the day, into your first term in the United States Congress. Tell us a little bit about your transition, and obviously what the biggest surprises have been, and also maybe some of the challenges.
Yeah. Well, it is, in fact, the 13th week, so that's either lucky or unlucky. But we also have the Lunar New Year, so, it's the year of the dragon. Lots of things happening. I am overwhelmed by a few components of my experience thus far. One, the strength, the intelligence, the breadth and depth of knowledge of the colleagues that I have in the Democratic caucus. They are phenomenal. I don't spend as much time with them as I thought you would. In Congress, I thought you talk to your colleagues all the time in the hallways and the cloakrooms. In fact, it's fairly limited to the times when you're voting. So you have to be very thoughtful about engaging. And I don't mean that in a sort of strategic way that you're trying to get something from someone, but you want to engage people with purpose. And there are so many phenomenal members, especially in New England. The New England delegation is pound for pound the most influential in the Congress. And that is not me saying that because I am on the team, but I sort of feel like we're the 07 Patriots. We have the future chair of the Ways and Means Committee, the future chair of the Appropriations Committee. We have the whip. We have who will be our majority leader when we win in November. So there is so much talent in the region, and so that is something that I have been very intentional about. The great thing about having this job is following someone like David Cicilline. And I say that because it is a great conversation starter, because they all love him. They all love him. And in my first few days, and frankly, in 13 weeks in, you're still introducing yourself to people, we talk about David and how he's doing. And I say, I see him all the time. He's doing really well. My name's Gabe. But, you know, I did learn something, Jim. Mm-hmm. I'm going to have to one-up my predecessor in one way. He promised you for a long time to take you to a fine Providence restaurant. Yeah. Now, he's got a little more time than me, but we're going to schedule an appointment soon.
Wow, okay.
But the other thing that I would say, and this is more on the negative side, is the obstruction that you see on TV is real. I hear it in the elevators. I hear it on the floor. There are people who are determined to make sure that government doesn't work, and that is their raison d'etre. That's it. There's no end but to inspire and drive dysfunction. So that is disheartening, but it makes me really energized to work really hard while we are in this brief period of being in the wilderness, in the minority, to focus on building relationships with those on the other side of the aisle who are actually there to do the people's work, and to also figure out ways that I can leverage some of the relationships that I have on the other side of Pennsylvania Avenue to be effective and useful to Rhode Islanders today.
Have you made any friends on the other side of the aisle?
I have. I will tell you, one of the best gifts that I got was being appointed to the Foreign Affairs Committee, because there is a lot of bipartisanship on that committee. You know, some of the most intractable issues of our time as it relates to where we are in the world and the instability in the global theater, you know, are devoid of the partisanship that we see across a lot of other areas. So I have made very close friends with one of my subcommittee chairs, the subcommittee on Middle East, North Africa, and Central Asia, Joe Wilson. You might remember Joe Wilson from a State of the Union several years ago when President Obama was delivering it. You know, he might have gotten a little loose with the tongue and said something. But I will tell you, he may have said, you know, you lied to President Obama in that speech, but he's got a picture of him in his office. You know, so I think that was just momentary. You know, there's a lot of energy and emotion. It's in the chamber, but he came up to me after my maiden speech and beeline to me and said, "I'm Joe Wilson, and I want to be your friend." And he was very interested, in particular, in my background as a son of West African immigrants. I went to his office 2 weeks later, and which is a monument to his travels around the world and his real commitment to the diplomatic ties that make this country stronger, regardless of the partisan affiliation. Now, you know, don't get me wrong. If you watch some of these hearings on C-SPAN, you will see there are some divides when we talk about the border and root causes of migration, or we talk about some people's feelings, some of my colleagues' feelings about the withdrawal from Afghanistan. Those are real things. But a bill that I just put forward and sponsored is around not supporting Azerbaijan financially with military aid as they are continuing to oppress, the Armenian people. So that's a bill that I did with Republicans and joined on with another Democrat. And so there are real opportunities as it relates to strengthening our foreign policy posture to bringing people together. And if that's the base, we can build off of that.
This is your first elected office. You have a rich history in public service, working for the state level here, the Governor Gina Raimondo, and then working as a special assistant to the president and deputy director of intergovernmental affairs. How has those positions prepared you for this job?
I think other than sort of working in the Congress itself, that there wasn't better preparation that I could have for this moment in time. And here's why I say that. When I look at the $4 trillion in federal spending that has gone out there, and I think about how it was on the other side of Pennsylvania Avenue to work towards mayors and governors taking up these funds, applying, being aggressive, and both driving the advocacy and the implementation. Well, I think you need legislators who are well-versed in executive function in order to write better law, but also to hold those accountable, right? It's no mistake that, my predecessor was a mayor before, made things work. And so in Congress, there isn't necessarily a bias towards action, right? There's a bias towards conversation. And that's the nature, right? The world's greatest deliberative body. However, it is important that we have leaders that are focused on solving problems as they arise and really move aggressively. So in these opening weeks, one of the things that I've done is dug into the IRA, the bill, the CHIPS and Science Act, and tried to find as much Rhode Island in there and explore whether people in this state, whether that is state and local government, whether that is nonprofits, community organizations, the business community, whether they are aware, and making sure that we do a roadshow that when I pick up the phone, I just don't want to call and say hi, right? If people have seen my face on the newspaper, that's not why I'm doing this. I'm doing this to build connectivity between the resources that are available and the outcomes that we want right here in Rhode Island. And so that experience that I have, I've worked for a lot of people who are sharp, smartest people I've ever seen, and fierce. When I talk about Gina Raimondo, the word that I use, relentless, right? Because it was about getting to the solution. When I think about President Biden, the number of times you sit in the Oval Office with him and leave with a longer list than he came in with is countless, because his level of analysis is we need to get things done. We need to demystify all of this that happens in Washington and make it mean something to people in Providence, in Pawtucket, and Woonsocket, in Newport, and Middletown, all 19 in the 1st District. So that bias is really important.
You have been assigned to two significant committees, the Foreign Affairs and the Science and Space and Technology. What will be your priorities on those committees?
Yes. On Foreign Affairs, I'm very interested in how we can use our emerging technology, emerging opportunities to recast our economic presence in different parts of the world and use that as a greater force for good. And here's what I mean by that. You look at what Russia has been able to do in destabilizing the European economy. But that provides us really good opportunity. Yeah, they're moving LNG and making more money than they ever have, but we have an opportunity to advance our investments in Eastern Bloc countries towards renewables, towards energy that is leaving them less dependent on Russia. That's a reorientation. When we look at our opportunities on the continent of Africa, right, the youngest in the world, right, we cannot cede this century to Russia and China on the African continent. It will mean that we are not growing our marketplaces. It will mean that we are losing influence in a part of the world that needs us, right? We cover a lot of things on television news right now. You're not hearing a lot about the African continent. That's a shame. But that presents an opportunity for us to grow our presence, to think about how, with the instability that exists all over, that we can plant roots that will grow into this next century in a very meaningful way. So those are a few things that I'm interested in. And broadly, I think we need a new generation of voices on global diplomacy. There aren't a lot of 36-year-olds leading on our foreign policy in this government. It skews towards, statesmen who have been around a bit. That's why I'm really excited this weekend. I'm going to the Munich Security Conference for the first time. And I will see many members of parliamentary governments from throughout Europe, throughout other parts of the world. And I do want the world to see that there are different faces doing this work. That means a lot. So it's not just the representation here in Rhode Island, I want to transmit that abroad as well. And I think this is a special opportunity that I have, so I'm leaping into it. On science, space, and technology, it's sort of a quirky committee that not a lot of people know about. And sometimes when you join Congress, people ask you, what committees are you on? And sometimes you may say oversight or a small business or a veterans or one of the committees that a younger member is on, and people say, oh, well, how can you help the district? And I said, very early, actually, when I was running, I said, I'm interested in the science committee. And it doesn't get a lot of attention, but it has in recent years because of the CHIPS and Science Act. And for Rhode Island in particular, this committee is focused on non-defense R&D spending across the government. So you look at some of the areas of jurisdiction, NOAA, NIST, that has a big presence on AI. So you heard the AI caucus. That's why I'm focused there, because we do need to be very intentional about who's around the table on AI, and it's important, but sometimes scary transformational impact that we project on the horizon. And then you look at so much of the investments that we're making as it relates to the blue economy here in this state. And so the NSF is another area of jurisdiction there. So I want to be thoughtful on that committee based on who we see in front of us. How do I connect and pivot to Rhode Island? So on those two committees, I think, we've got Rhode Island and we've got the world. But Rhode Island is the world. So I'm excited to be doing this work.
The House and the Senate are at odds over the makeup of the supplemental appropriation bill to help to defend against terror and aggression overseas. The Senate just passed a bill this weekend, $60 billion for Ukraine, $14 billion for Israel. What's the outlook in the House and giving aid to both Ukraine and Israel?
Well, it's as undetermined as a snow forecast for tomorrow. But here's what I would say. Last week, you saw Democrats come together in a very difficult vote around a Israel-only bill to fund with military aid. And this was amongst my toughest votes in the first 13 weeks. Because, I'll be very clear, I stand, with Israel in their need to respond to Hamas, but I also think that we have to be extremely vigorous in our engagement with the Israeli government, with Bibi Netanyahu, about the way that they are waging this war, and the fact that we are going to need to rebuild Gaza and bring together a multinational coalition that is invested in people who have suffered by no fault of their own. And so, for me, it's untenable to put anything forward without humanitarian aid that is at minimal rather commensurate with the harms that those people have faced. But at the same time, we can't keep our eye off the ball as it relates to Ukraine, right? This is a fight for democracy. The dominoes will fall very quickly if Ukraine falls. It is threatening to NATO, threatening to U.S. troops eventually. And so it is sort of counter to what Republicans talk about all the time in terms of a robust, a strong national security goal when you won't fund Ukraine. This is our fight too. The fight for democracy we are part of it from Jump Street. So that's a real missing piece there. And then, of course, the emerging threats in the South China Sea. I mean, emerging. It's not emerging. It's there. It's present. It's in front of us. China is focused on reunification. They tell us every day. And it will threaten not only our economic security, but it will threaten what we have made as a big priority and set of investments in that region for us here. Think about AUKUS, right? The United Kingdom, Australia, and United States coming together to increase our presence in that region so that we can be more of a deterrent to those reunification aspirations of China. So what are the prospects? I think that there will be great pressure on the speaker. I think he knows that he may not be long for that job. I don't know, it's clear to me. And their biggest problem is they don't know who else could follow him. They don't know who else could follow him. So I think he's probably got 100+ votes. Democrats will come together and get us across the finish line like we have already multiple times to keep the government funded multiple times. And so I think we will see something. I think it may be longer than we'd like. I don't think it's happening this week. I mean, I think the Senate's got to figure out its amendment process and all of that. And then we've got to see, is there a profile and courage that is in the heart of the speaker? I don't know.
You have a looming deadline early March, whether the government is going to exist or not. What are you hearing from your colleagues?
I actually hear good things for now. The fact that it's quiet in the public arena is a good thing. The second this spills out, that's when I would have some issues. We've got a March 1 deadline and a March 8th deadline. They've already reoriented the calendars to make sure that we are there. We will be voting on February 29th. Thank you for the leap year for giving us another day to sort this out. But my thinking is ultimately there's way too much risk for everybody involved. And if the Republicans want to put forward a face of competence that has been lacking, they can't do this again. But maybe that's just my naivete in this moment. But my thinking is they know they just won't be able to survive another set of threats to shutting down the government. Now, but remember, it goes back to my earlier point. There are people whose existential approach to this is burn the whole thing down. So it's tough.
Oftentimes infrastructure issues aren't at the forefront of our daily discussions until something emergency happens, such as what happened here in Providence. And what's almost as alarming is the fact that statistically, I believe that Rhode Island has the 4th highest percentage of structurally deficient bridges in the nation. Do you think the Washington Bridge situation has served as a wake-up call to speed up repairs and replacement of our aging infrastructure, not just here in Rhode Island, but in our nation?
Well, 3 p.m. on December 11th, I got a great birthday present, which was a call about this bridge. In all seriousness, I would say the Washington Bridge is emblematic of a lot of the challenges that you have when you talk about infrastructure. It's really easy to push things down the road, right? Because repair and keeping things functioning, it sometimes seems like a shorter, path to keeping things rolling for everybody. However, I don't think the alarm on this particular incident illuminates the issue of infrastructure. Not for us here in New England, right? We have the effects of weather, we have the effects of deferred maintenance. We regionally care about it. I think other parts of the country less so, which was why the infrastructure law, in many ways, when you measured along popular support, people don't really rank infrastructure high across the country. They do in this region, but they don't elsewhere, which is why, in some ways, I think it was easier to get done. It was easier to get done when you have people with newer roads and bridges in other parts of the country. They have a different approach. Now, my feeling is on the Washington Bridge is that we've got to get very focused and then we have to communicate better than we have to date. I think Rhode Islanders are going to be mad no matter what, and they should be, right? This is disruptive to small businesses, to commutes. I was talking to somebody regarding a school in East Providence where there are kids coming back and forth over the bridge. It's taking a while. I think this is real cause for concern, but I think that we should communicate better, use all of the conversation that has happened to date as a teaching experience, and work towards the greatest amount of transparency that we can provide so that Rhode Islanders feel like they're partners in the repair or whatever the conclusions are. So ultimately, I think it's up to the governor and the DOT to sort out what the solution is. And then I'm going to work hand in glove with the rest of the delegation to get every single dollar we need. Because right now, I don't think it's a money problem. There is historic level of funding available for infrastructure right now. So it's not a money problem. This is about the method. And this is also about how we tell the story of how we're going to do this and how Rhode Islanders will be affected so that they can predict and anticipate. But there's no perfect solution here, and my hope is that we don't wait too long, that we are very coordinated, and that we are, again, back to what I said previously, focused on the actions. Focus on the action. There's a lot of noise. We've got to cut through it. We've got to recognize that people feel pain, right? When President Clinton said, "I feel your pain," that was meaningful, right? We need the empathy of our politics to be present, in addition to solving the problem so people can go about their lives.
The entire New England region struggling with housing shortages, which has a tremendous economic impact on the region, and high housing costs make it challenging for employers to attract, retain, and make this region more attractive for businesses to consider locating and expanding here. I know the recently passed tax package includes a measure in there, I believe, to bolster the production of affordable housing. But what more do you think needs to be done, and what Congress' role could be in that?
Yeah. Thank you for mentioning the tax package. So a few weeks ago, out of the House, in a bipartisan fashion, which is good, we passed a tax relief package that included additional funding for the low-income housing tax credit. That will ultimately, I think the analysis suggests that we'll be able to build 200,000 more housing units across the country. It's like a drop in the bucket. And there are some lowering of barriers for bond financing, some things that will be catalytic. It'll be helpful. But we need to do more. We need to do more in large part because the challenges that we're facing, especially in this region, especially here in Rhode Island, are being so disruptive to everything else, right? Housing is so central to the ability to grow wealth, to have a stable job, to make sure kids have stable upbringings for our seniors, to be able to retire with dignity. There are so many things involved there. So one of the pieces of unfinished business from the president's infrastructure legislation passed under that historically productive 117th Congress that Congressman Cicilline was in, we didn't tackle housing. It was hard because there were members fighting tooth and nail, particularly on the House side, to get the dough in there. Unfortunately, when the IRA came through as it was, they distilled it to energy and to healthcare and a few other things. But those were the big pieces, and it was hard to get other things in. So a lot of members, especially the folks from California, where they're dealing with big issues as well. At the White House was working with a group of mayors from across the country, mayors and CEOs for housing production. And heartbroken over it. There are some good things like the expansion of section choice vouchers, more of those, but you need more because housing costs go up, and you have to meet that rise in costs. So we need, I hesitate to say Marshall Plan 4 because everybody uses that for everything, but we need a Marshall Plan for housing. What we need it in such a way because we have these confounding challenges that everybody knows about, right? The costs to build. We have zoning issues. We have so many hurdles to retrofitting and commercial to residential conversions. There's a lot in there. So we need a robust package. One of my colleagues I was just talking with about this. I just am joining one of her bills. I forgot the title of the bill. It's the Housing Crisis Response Act. And it's a lot of the elements from the Build Back Better title on housing, doing everything from providing some carrots to incentivize zoning reform to expanding the low-income housing tax credit by even more than we just did, by working to help first-time home buyers, right? That's such a big thing that you think about. Think about all those people around my age. I'm 36. I don't own a home. I'd like to. But I've worked in government my whole life. So the challenge there is helping some of our first-time home buyers because that gap is so important. A lot of the young people I know, they're being helped by their parents for that first that down payment on their home. That's not going to work. And if that millennial group, right, not the Gen Zs and not the Xers above them, the millennial group can't get into home ownership, it's going to provide a real lag on our economy. The wealth building and creation isn't happening. And then, of course, we have to do more work on homelessness and certainly addressing the interconnectedness between homelessness and behavioral and mental health challenges. So it's got to be big. And this is one of my biggest hopes for a term 2 of the Biden-Harris administration is that housing is in top 3 of the things that they're able to address. And if they have a Congress that's able to work with them, we'll get it done.
The New England Council has created a housing initiative working group, and I believe Griff Doherty, who's here in the back, is heading it up from the New England Council, and they're meeting, I believe, Wednesday of this week, Thursday, and the response is overwhelming. But there's opportunity for people here to play a role, and if you want to be more engaged, to know what is being discussed at the meeting, you can reach out to Griff as we leave here today. But the response is, quite frankly, astounding. The need is so great throughout the area. Offshore wind is a key component of our region's effort to reach our carbon reduction goals. However, I'm sure you and your staff are aware of the difficulties that coincide with constructing new energy projects. Can you speak to Congress's work in helping to kind of streamline the new renewable energy projects?
Well, gratefully, we have some tools, right? Again, because of that productive 117th Congress, we have a lot to work with in the IRA. But it's not enough, right? We need to unlock the possibilities behind some of these tax credits, make sure that they apply to a lot of the activities that are happening onshore, growing the types of communities that can benefit, because these are expensive projects. This is really capital intensive, and as you've read in the news, it is harder for some of the companies involved to continue to do this everywhere. Luckily, the commitment is here to grow the offshore wind presence in Rhode Island and southeastern Massachusetts. So that's really important, making sure that the catalytic impact of the tax credits are being fulfilled, and then working to make sure that we've thought through distribution, because again, we're projecting energy use out into the future. So Senator Whitehouse, in fact, has a bill in the Senate side. I don't think it's made it to the House side yet, around some streamlining the transmission systems so that we're constructing these large cables underground. We're able to distribute to communities that need that electricity. So I think Congress's role is to stay on top of it, is to not let the administration, many of my friends, off the hook in terms of meeting these goals, because the puzzle pieces of how we get to this require a lot of inputs from a lot of different pieces of the federal government. And it's very easy for there to be a laggard that brings everything down, between Interior and Commerce Department and the Energy Department. And, you've got a lot of players there. So the accountability is important, because ultimately, God forbid, in my opinion, that there's a different administration, this stuff could, fall apart, and all of the promise of this goes away. And so I don't want, the component that kills deals, right? To the business people in the room, time kills deals. So we can't let time kill this one.
The one issue that Congress doesn't seem to be able to come together on is migration. And it's a big issue, and in New Hampshire primary, it was the number 2 issue. Number 1 was the economy, and number 2 was immigration. And I think immigration in many of the primary states was right there at the top 2. Do you think there will ever be any type of consensus with both branches on this issue?
Yes, because there has to be. I don't know if it's going to happen soon. I don't know if it's going to happen soon. But we know that if we do nothing, all of these problems get exacerbated, right? The folks who are coming here for noble reasons, right? The promise of our country and the opportunities that they perceive exist here. However, we know that the challenges that we face in our communities, I know that a lot of the mayors I've spoken to along my work, the pathway for that opportunity, it just is in existence when you have overwhelmed systems, when you have a set of barriers to integrate, and a method of arrival that is disorderly in so many ways. We should have, the golden ring of comprehensive immigration reform. I'm there for that. But in the interim, we got to work backwards. And so how do we work backwards from that? We create a system that is actually designed to succeed. It's not designed to succeed right now. Right? We have a dysfunctional asylum process. We don't have staffing in immigration courts. We don't have enough people at the Border Patrol. They talk about border all the time, but not funding anybody to actually do the work. All right? That's cognitive dissonance. Mm-hmm. So it is, to me, a challenge for us. How do we match our values, right? Values of America being the beacon of opportunity with the reality that if people are coming, and you hear about these tales, and these are folks coming from Central America, coming from Eastern Europe, coming from Africa, coming from China. Like, people are coming from all over and coming in these very dangerous ways to them, right? And then coming to a country that has no real way to ensure their safety, their survival, their ability to thrive. That's the rub here. And so ultimately, my hope is that, we take some steps. They can't be draconian steps, but we will need some bold steps to slow migration. I don't think you will ever be able, unlawful migration. I don't think you'll ever be able to stop it outright, but to slow it and then create a process for those who are willing to take all the steps that are needed for them to come in. But I think the president, I think the Senate Democrats have made some really hard choices and I don't know if we're going to see that matched by anything in the House. And so ultimately, how do we work towards what we want to see in January? And I think that's what it's really got to be focused there. And it's pretty terrible for me, again, my bias towards action, to think that we'd wait a whole year on this. Mm-hmm. And I think you'll see a series of emergency measures. You'll see the president issue executive orders of some type. You will see, requests for funding for emergency food and shelter. You will see a lot of things that are Band-Aids. But I know that we can do better. It just is the fact of the matter is that the House's leadership just doesn't enable us to do that today.
I mean, would you be worried that if the president did use executive order to address some of the issues you just alluded to, that it would be challenged in court? Some members of the other party would say he doesn't have the authority to do that. Mm-hmm. In other words, delay again addressing the issue and tie it up in the courts.
Look, I think he would anticipate challenges on both sides. I think there are groups, and this is a passionate issue. Some of my colleagues, in particular, my colleagues in the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, are really frustrated that they haven't had a seat at the table, right? And so it's a very emotional set of things. And so you'll see advocacy groups from both ends hit the president. I think he'll take whatever steps he thinks make sense. We are at a crisis point. I don't think it's a manufactured crisis. I think sometimes what we run into trouble with, especially those who share my affiliation, is that we say it's not that big of a problem, we have a plan. However, sometimes in order to make your plan work, you have to identify that a problem exists. And it isn't necessary to inspire fear to get the action you want, but you just have to, I think, being transparent about what we're seeing and what people are experiencing. Right? A lot of this is feelings. A lot of this is feelings. When you look at opinion polling, you have people so far from communities where there's migration happening reporting immigration as their top concern. Why is that? It's the media environment. It's the promulgation of fear. So we have to have hope, not fear. But the only way to get there is that you start to be transparent and inspire action. If people see that you have a plan, they will feel better.
Just one final question. You came from the White House. You talked to your friends in the White House. Why is it that the president doesn't get much credit for the economy? Mm-hmm. When you look at our economy compared to China, India, we're the EU countries in Europe, we're the strongest. We have the healthiest economy this past year.
I used to have great frustration about this every day, and there were so many talking points we're pushing out. I'm doing weekly calls telling people we're doing the best. They're like, no, you're not. Like, read the data, read the numbers. The rapper Jay-Z says, men lie, women lie, numbers don't. But people think the numbers are lying. They don't believe numbers. You give them facts. That's not true. Someone created that. And so I think it's a few things. Right, I think it's certainly the media landscape, as I articulated previously, is one. I do think is that we don't put our ideas forward in bumper stickers. We do them in paragraphs. We do them in bullet points and not in phrase. And Americans are more overwhelmed by information now than they ever have been. And the way that information is moving around, right? The people you trust the most are the people closest to you in your life. So you are going to trust the Facebook posts from Crazy Aunt Sally over anything on NBC Nightly News. You will. Because Crazy Aunt Sally isn't going to lie to you. She loves you. So, versus the Nightly News that is selling you, what high-minded, smart people think is the news of the day. So our challenge is that we don't have as many trusted messengers. I will tell you, Donald Trump is a decent communicator. Like I can't do more than 30 seconds of it, but I know I can put it on mute and know what he said. right? The mute test. Somebody told me this a long time ago. Just watch a politician on mute. See if you can get a sense of what they're conveying. And so the ultimate challenge for us is we've done so much, but because we've done so much, we've handicapped ourselves. Because which things do you focus on? And yeah, there's polling, there are focus groups, there's all sorts of ways to do it. But when you have a less robust record, sometimes it's easier to just focus on those narrow pieces. And this is what I've done, and they identify you for something. So I think that will continue to be a problem for the president, continue to be a problem for Democrats. But you hang a lantern on your problems, right? So let us figure out who the best messengers are. Let us not try to address everything in one manner. I think the president, in so many ways, is not always the most credible because people think he just wants something from us. He just wants our votes. But if we evangelize enough people on the issues that mean the most to us, we'll get further along, and that's lasting messaging power, but you can't get that overnight. And that's why one of my duties as a member of Congress is to find a few things to latch onto and talk about how those things were made possible only because of President Biden and a very productive 117th Congress that I get to bask in the glory of.
Well, with that, I think you would all agree it's been a very informative and discussion, and I promise I will never put a mute button on when you speak. We want to hear every word. But we want to thank you and congratulations on your victory, and your career is only beginning here in the United States Congress, and we're blessed to have you part of the New England congressional delegation, and wish you much success in the future.
Well, thank you, Jim, and thank you everybody for spending your morning with us.